Harpreet is teaching in Federation University. He has worked, his PhD also is on water itself per se.
Thank you.
And then we have Dr. Indra Khurana. She is, I think, has been in the sector for nearly 3 decades, Indraji?
Yes.
3 decades. And we jointly did a project in Madhya Pradesh way back, UN Habitat, then Water Aid, she was representing then, and Dr. Kandra at that time. Arjun Singh ji, चालू करें?
सर चालू तक करती है, एक्चुअली रिटेन नहीं किया, हमारे नेट ऑफिस में नेट नहीं चल रहा है, अब लाइव है, आप ऑन कर सकते हैं।
ऑन कैसे करेंगे हम, बताओ?
नहीं लाइव हो गया, आपको ऊपर लाइव आ गया होगा।
तो मतलब है कि अगर किसी को दिखानी हो अपनी प्रेजेंटेशन तो कैसे करेंगे? डिसेबल हुआ है ना सिस्टम?
It's working now.
It's working now.
Acha. Right. Now I am told it is working now. Yes, that's right.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
जब भी नेट 2 मिनट पता नहीं मैंने बोला है नेट आ रहा है, मैं साथ सेंड करूंगा, कोई नहीं, तब तक मैं भी कर दूंगा चाहिए।
Right. Okay.
ऑफिस का नेटवर्क का इशू, सॉरी सर।
हाँ नहीं ठीक है, that's right.
Yes.
Hello.
हाँ जी, हाँ जी.
Good morning, Kulvendra sir.
Good morning, ji. Good morning.
Sir, I have enabled the screen sharing. Can everybody's screen share their screen?
Oh, thank you so
You
much.
can start the webinar now.
That's very
We are live on
nice,
Facebook.
actually. Mushrat Saab, welcome. Basically that. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Very nice, and we are very happy that you are able to join us today. As you know that we have also, a participation by the UNCRD. Mr. Monty is joining from Japan, basically, and he will be like the opening speaker as a keynote speaker for that matter. And followed by that, I think, we are inviting you to be the next speaker after that. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
That's what it is, basically that. Montiji is, I think, not yet, he was there actually, but I think he seems to have put it off actually. Let him join, and then perhaps I think we just started.
So we will begin as you say.
Sorry.
So we'll begin the webinar on your direction.
Yes, yes. The moment he joins, actually, we'll start it.
Okay, sir.
Okay. This is just for information that, we have been organizing these webinars in partnership with the All India Institute of Local Self-Government and, Urban Update largely. And we have been getting support also from United Nations Center for Regional Development in this regard. And that's how it is. And we are hoping that, we'll continue also in the current year, 2022, with more number of webinars in that sense, basically. So from Niti Ayog, we have always had some good participation in the sense that, resource persons, in one of them, Amitabh Kantji was also there, the CEO of Niti Ayog. And, we are going to have, I think I shared with all of you details of the, UNCRD's forthcoming, forum, 3R and Circular Economy Forum, that has been postponed for the time being, but I think the new dates will be announced in due course of time. And we welcome all of you basically joining us there. And I think that's a good link also for all of you in the sense that, you can actively get involved, actually also as resource persons or as panelists in that regard. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Are you there?
Yes, sir. I am here, sir.
Okay, that's very good, very nice. So system is working now? System is working. Okay, so we start actually. I'm just waiting for Mohanty ji to join. So I think as soon as...
Can we start because sir, we are live on Facebook, so the start कर देते हैं because Facebook पे live रहेंगे.
Okay, that we can do that. Yeah.
Yes, Dr. Singh.
Anji, we are starting, sir. Bilkul immediately.
No, I am already here.
Okay, all right. I was not seeing you on the screen.
Oh, no, I am here. Can't you see me?
Yes, we can see you now. Yes, very much so. Okay, then we start. Actually, we are already live. Good morning and welcome to all the participants of our last webinar of this fiscal year 21-22. Friends, as we all know that water is needed to ensure food security, feed livestock, take up industrial production, and to conserve biodiversity and environment. Although India is not a water poor country, however, due to growing human population, we are nearly 135 crores at this moment. With severe neglect and overexploitation of this resource, water is becoming a scarce commodity. The most common threat to water security is water scarcity. 1/3 of our cities and towns are presently water stressed, and by 2030, as the projections indicate, half of our cities will be water stressed unless we change our approach to deal with this life-saving resource. This webinar aims at discussing the whole issue of water security as a problem in India, the challenges of water security, the reasons and the need for water security, the effects of water security, and the role of 3R and circular economy as an approach to address these objectives. The fact that we in India treat only 22% of our wastewater, thus continuing with a linear rather than circular approach, strongly highlights and underscores the need for taking urgent steps for water security in India by adopting 3R and circular approach. This webinar, which has been jointly planned by 3R Waste Foundation, All India Institute of Local Self-Government, and Urban Update, along with UNCRD, is a pre-event of the forthcoming UNCRD's Regional 3R and Circular Economy Forum for Asia and the Pacific. A word about UNCRD. It's important. United Nations Center for Regional Development, established in 1971 in Japan, strives to promote sustainable regional development in developing countries of Asia and the Pacific, with a focus on development planning and management in the context of globalization and decentralization trends, and the growing concern towards global environmental issues and their impacts. We have a very distinguished panel of experts who will be speaking in this webinar. And to start with, we are honored to have Mr. C.R.C. Mohanty, currently working as the Environment Program Coordinator at UNCRD, UNDESA in Japan for the last 2 decades, since 2003. Under his stewardship, UNCRD has been implementing 3 flagship programs at regional and global level. Promotion of environmentally sustainable transport in Asia, promotion of 3R resource efficiency and circular economy in Asia and the Pacific, and international partnership on expanding waste management, service of local authorities, what is called IPLA, which is a Sustainable Development Goals Partnership. Mr. Mohanty has played a significant role in establishing a high-level policy forum titled as Regional 3R and Circular Economy Forum in Asia and the Pacific. As already mentioned, that our present webinar is a pre-event of the forthcoming regional forum. We feel honored that Mr. Mohanty has very kindly agreed to deliver the keynote address on the theme of the webinar itself, 3R and Circular Economy towards Water Security of India. I have the pleasure and honor of inviting Mr. Mohanty for his words of wisdom. Mr. Mohanty, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Singh, for your kind introduction. Distinguished delegates, panelists, and participants, warm greetings from Japan. First of all, on behalf of UNCRD, UNDESA, I would like to express our deep appreciation to all the co-organizers of this event, in particular, the 3R Waste Foundation and the All India Institute for Local Self-Government. I'm very honored to deliver this keynote address at this event that aims to address 3R, circular economy, in the context of water security of India. This is a very important area. While India implements a number of ambitious programs, in particular the Swachh Bharat mission, and also the smart cities, and also India aims to put a solid foundation for clean, inclusive, sustained, and sustainable growth for the next 3 decades. This is as per the strategy for New India at 75. Also, at a stage when India is among the fastest growing major economies with its fresh water resources facing tremendous pressure due to population explosion, urbanization, rising demand, pollution, etc., what Dr. Singh was outlining in the very beginning. India has 4% of the world's freshwater resources, but also shares 16% of the global population. Several regions of India also experience water scarcity due to uneven distribution of the water resources over space and the time. According to Central Water Commission, I think all of us know that the per capita annual water availability in the country has decreased from 1,816 cubic meter in 2001 to 1,544 cubic meter in 2011, and to now around 1,486 cubic meter per capita per annum. I think all of us know that internationally, one country, one of the most commonly used measure of the water stress or water scarcity is like if the amount of renewable water in a country is below 1,000 cubic meter per capita per annum, this country is said to be water stressed. If it's below 1,000 cubic meter per capita per annum, it is said to be experiencing the water scarcity. Water is so central that we cannot achieve any conceivable form of sustainable development and the sustainable development goals without achieving water security. But water scarcity has already hit 40% of the global population. Around 2.1 billion people face water crisis worldwide. While the growing demand of water in domestic, agriculture, industry sector along the rising population and climate change critically affects our water security, we should note that for every 1 degree centigrade rise in temperature, in global temperature rise, an additional 500 million people will face water scarcity. Climate change alters water cycles, reducing the quantity of fresh water and water body surface area. Lakes and wetlands, those play a very important role in regulating water cycle by moderating the local climates. Wetlands are being drained for agriculture. With some of the 87% of the wetlands we have lost globally in last 300 years. Over the last century, we have also destroyed half of our wetlands. Today, many of our lifeline rivers and water bodies are severely polluted due to rampant discharge and dumping of the various untreated waste. Nearly 80% of the world's wastewater is discharged into our oceans and rivers without treatment. India, for instance, generates about 140 billion cubic meter of wastewater annually. And approximately 1.4 million people die annually worldwide from disease associated with pathogens, polluted drinking water, and inadequate sanitation. Some 2.3 million people still do not have access to safe sanitation. The total global disease burden could be cut by up to an estimated 10% with improved drinking water quality and sanitation. There are a number of new and emerging pollutants that we should not also ignore, which are actually not so easy to remove by existing wastewater treatment technologies, specifically certain veterinary and human pharmaceuticals, pesticides, antimicrobial disinfectants, flame retardants, detergent metabolites, and microplastics. Each year, all of you may know that globally an estimated 8 million tons of plastics end up in our oceans, and at least 51 trillion microplastic particles are already in our oceans, critically also affecting our food security. Microplastics with a diameter less than 5 mm in coastal and marine environment is a critical problem, including bioaccumulation of hydrophobic persistent organic pollutants such as PCBs, DDTs, SCS, and other form of plastics through the ingestion or the food chain, like fish to fish and fish to people. Most of this plastic waste in oceans are from urban areas linked into natural drainage and rivers. Roughly 90% of all the plastics that is entering into the ocean come from through actually 10 rivers, and 8 are in Asia Pacific and only 2 are in Africa. Not only plastics, highly toxic heavy metals like mercury, lead, chromium, cadmium, and arsenic also pose serious threats to the water security in Asia and the other countries. Heavy metals from industrial and agricultural sector and artisanal mining can bioaccumulate in plants grown with contaminated irrigation water. So now my fundamental question is, can environment wait? Should countries grow now and clean up later? Can we really reverse these unsustainable trends by 2030? How can we ensure that no one is left behind? This is actually forms the axis for all the 17 SDGs. That is, can we achieve by 2030 universal and equitable access to safe and affordable drinking water for all? That is SDG 6, target 6.1. And so is the SDG 6 target 6.3 that aims to improve water quality by reducing pollution, by eliminating dumping and minimizing release of hazardous chemicals and substances. So what can 3R and circular economy offer? The circular economy concept, which offers us an environmentally friendly alternative growth model, is all about making the better use of our natural resources, ecological assets like forest, soil, water, air, metals, and the minerals. Circular economy is a closed loop economy in which nearly all wastes or the outputs either become input to other manufacturing processes or are returned to the natural systems as benign emissions rather than as pollutants. Thus, pollution is prevented in land, water, air, or an ocean. Many countries, unfortunately, still pursue the linear economy where waste is traditionally thought of having no value and must be dumped or landfill or incinerated. which is a root cause of many of the problems that we face today, including the problems that we face in our water sector. Circular economy also implies that we must decouple waste and the ecosystem. In this case, the freshwater ecosystem, the freshwater resources, through circular economic utilization of entire waste stream so that nothing is spilled into our rivers, lakes, water bodies, oceans, and other ecosystems. It is an economy in which resource efficiency is placed at the center of every economic decision making. And it is an economy where wastes are eliminated by treating them as valuable resources or as secondary input materials. Consumption of raw materials, natural resources, water, energy is also minimized for unit product and the services. Efficiency is, of course, improved. So circular economy or moving towards a zero waste society is inherently a multi-stakeholder partnership. Governments, business, civil society, finance institutions, research organizations, everyone has an important role to play in achieving circularity. In order to operationalize 3R and circular economy, there is a need to build strong triangular cooperation between the government and R&D institutions, scientific and research institutions, and the private sector. Some studies suggest that circular economy could generate about $4.5 trillion of additional economic output by 2030. But it will require tremendous technological interventions, frontier technologies of the fourth industrial revolutions, such as IoT, Internet of Things, 3D printing, robotics, cloud computing, blockchain technologies, nanotechnologies, and also the green chemistry. If we look into the footprints of any smart city, any clean city, or any eco-city in the world, we will see a systematic collaboration between the city and the business sector, basically the government and the business sector, in advancing circular economy. That means city supports business and business supports city in a symbiotic way. For example, the eco-city like Kawasaki in Japan demonstrates strong collaborative culture between R&D institutions and the private companies on environmental technologies with active support of the government. Local private companies take their own initiative in environmentally sound business operations and contribute to preventing local and global environmental problems. Kawasaki City has also established systematic industrial symbiosis through a regional network of resource recovery, resource reuse, and recycling. That means waste of one industry are used as input materials for another industry. Once these Japanese cities like Kitakyushu or Kawasaki were highly polluted cities, but due to progressive integration of 3R, resource efficiency, and circular economy principles in key development sectors under the umbrella policy framework of the national government, which is the fundamental law for establishing a sound material cycle society. Now Japan hosts one of the highest number of eco-cities with crystal clean rivers and the water bodies. And we can imagine the role of 3R and the circularity. And Japan now aims to realize Society 5.0 that aims to creating a new society that incorporates the technological innovations of the fourth industrial revolution. Example, the IoT, big data, artificial intelligence, robotics that I was mentioning in all industries and social activities, and aims to achieve both economic development and solutions to the social challenges, including the environmental problems, the greenhouse gas emissions, the climate change, etc. in parallel. Take another example. Let us take the textile industry, which uses huge quantities of fossil fuels each year to produce cloths from synthetic fibers. Textile production, including cotton farming, uses almost 100 billion cubic meters of water per year and approximately 4% of the global freshwater withdrawal. At the same time, people discard or throw away still wearable cloths worth an estimated of 460 billion each year. These are some of the studies by World Resource Institute and others. So creating a circular economy for textile, meaning that to shift to recycle and recyclable materials in order to reduce the amount of land, water, fossil fuels used to produce the new clothes. It means to keep the clothes in use for longer time. It means making the use of second-hand clothes or other items as a fashion. Some research suggests that the purchase of 100 second-hand garments can displace the production of around 85 new garments. Currently, more than half of the global population live in urban areas, in the cities. And by 2050, it is going to be approximately 66%. Cities consume approximately 70% of all natural resources, 75% of the world's energy, while generating about 75% of the global CO2 emissions. Therefore, making cities smart, resilient, livable, inclusive, and sustainable, as called upon by SDG 11, is indispensable. And without achieving water security and without access to safe drinking water and sanitation, how can we achieve SDG 11? So moving towards circular economy also means enhancing resilience. State of our natural resources and ecological assets determine the degree of our resilience to issues like climate change, increasing frequency and magnitude of the natural disasters, and also the health emergencies like the current COVID-19 pandemic. For instance, around 60% of the infectious diseases are zoonotic, meaning that they spread from animals to humans. As humans' activities continue to disturb habitats and the ecosystems worldwide, we are likely to witness more and more pathogens crossing from wildlife to the human in future. Therefore, how we manage our natural resources, ecological assets, will be defining the level of our resilience, whether it is social resilience, economic resilience, or the ecological resilience. Ecological, social, and economic resilience all are actually interrelated, and the resilience of one dimension actually triggers the resilience of the another dimension. Lastly, let me conclude that all the UN member countries are concurrently implementing a number of interlinked and mutually reinforcing international agendas and agreements like 2030 Agenda, SDGs, the Paris Agreement on Climate Change, the Habitat 3 New Urban Agenda, the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, the Nairobi Mandate, among others. And the success of these agendas and agreements will largely depend on how effectively we integrate circular economic principles in major development sectors, industries, SMEs, construction, transport, energy, forestry, agriculture, water sector, tourism, trade, and commerce. Circular economy is an overarching principle in achieving synergies in national and international efforts to achieve these international agendas and agreements. Just to make a few recommendations at the end of my keynote speech is that in order to set in motion the circular economy, we need actually a number of measures. I will just highlight a couple of things, like we need to promote first the 3R as an economic industry. Government should not think that 3R or resource efficient circularity is a burden to the government. Rather, it is an economic industry which offers competitive solutions to many environmental issues and benefits to the cities and the communities. And the circular economy needs to be integrated into macroeconomic development policies. For example, what China has been consistently putting efforts to mainstream circular economy in its macroeconomy. We need to promote eco-industrial parks, regional infrastructure to support resource optimization and efficiency in the industries, in particularly targeting the small and medium enterprises which lack required finance and technological capacity to mainstream resource efficiency. We need to drive a science, innovation, and technology-based culture in the overall policy setting and development agendas. We need to promote research and development-oriented industrial structures to address resource efficiency related problems in industry sector in particular addressing the SMEs. I was giving you the example of the industrial symbiosis resource efficiency measures that Kawasaki City of Japan and other cities like Kitakyushu have been taking. We need to encourage also industry cooperation so that the byproducts circulate fully in the local production system, green products, green consumerism, and also renewable energy programs. We need to promote also inter-municipal cooperation, the city-city cooperation. For example, one city do not have the adequate capacity to handle a particular type of waste. That waste can be handled by another municipality or the city. So under a city-city cooperation. And most importantly, we need to promote both horizontal cooperation and the vertical cooperation in the government itself. Horizontal meaning that we need a strong cooperation among the line ministries, Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Industry, Urban Development, Public Works, Agriculture, Mining, Tourism, etc., so that circularity is adopted in major development sectors. And also the vertical cooperation between the cities and the national governments for circular economic development policies and programs to trickle down from central to local level as a part of the urban development strategy. In India, in fact, under the Smart Cities program, which is a perfect example of the vertical integration or cooperation between the central government and the local governments, and where actually the circularity could be mainstreaming. So with this one, I would like to thank all of you and wish you a very fruitful discussion. And thank you, Dr. Singh, to give me this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mohanty. I think you have wonderfully explained the various principles of circular economy. As a matter of fact, developing a circular economy is about achieving a set of social, economic, and environmental outcomes that underpin efforts towards more sustainable development models, while also ensuring social inclusion and equity. You have very rightly pointed out that if we fail to reverse these trends by 2030, we may also, in a way, not be able to achieve the objective of no one is left behind. The wonderful example that you have given for the textile industry, which applies both, let's say, to India, in South Asia, also to Bangladesh, also to several other countries. I think we really need to follow the circular principles in some of these, industries also, very surely. And I think what you have really said, that circular economy helps in enhancing resilience in every sense of the term. And success of these agendas are very, very important. Your takeaways that you have really explained so very well, basically, are significantly important, basically. And I think we really need to carry forward the agenda. Very happily, we also have with us, I think the advisor from Niti Aayog of India, which actually is responsible for monitoring the implementation of sustainable development goals, not only by all various ministries, but also with various state governments. And they really try to bring it out very annually, the progress report in the implementation of these sustainable development goals. And they have also come up with several reports on circular economy and resource efficiency. Mr. Avinash Mishra, presently working as advisor in tourism, culture, Panchayati Raj, water and land in Niti Aayog, is with us. And he brings with him an experience of nearly 3 decades in various positions in Government of India. An IIT graduate in the field of water resources, Mr. Mishra has been working in the national policy planning formulation, including action plans of the country. And he has been engaged in the development plans, proposals of the state governments relating to water resources sectors. I like to invite him. He intends to speak on a very interesting theme, the resource, the reuse opportunity that is most essential for water security in India. I leave the floor for Mr. Vinash Mishra for his presentation. Thank you so much for joining, Ms. Mishra.
Thank you very much. Before I start, I think I am audible, and
Yes, you are audible.
also
Yes, very much so.
and also the slides are visible.
Yes, that is right.
It
Yeah.
may also be okay. So is already has been detailed by Mr. Mohanty, and I don't feel that I should really go what's happening globally in case of the wastewater or reuse and how the circular economy transition should happen then from linear economy. Of course, the NITI Aayog is already engaged, and we have developed such 11 areas where the circular economy should be there, because this will not reduce the burden on the earth in terms of the waste which is being created, but will also economize many other industrial processes. In the same way, as we have already pledged in the COP26 that we are going to achieve the net zero by 2070, the carbon emission and the carbon sequestration will get equalized by 2070 in the India. To keep that in track, it is very essential that the pollution load should come down, and also the energy required to produce the one product should be in such a way that it can be a byproduct to some other processes. Going in the same way, I found the water, which is the crucial and which is not being used in that circulatory system in India. So my presentation would be more or less will be concentrated towards the uses in India and what is the scenario in India. With this, I will be going ahead with some of the statistics. Kindly bear if it happens to be a repetitive one. The reason being because to just setting the context of the subject, it would be required. Now, as we know that we have got the annual water availability of 1999 BCM, where the per capita water availability is something close to 1651 cubic meter. This figure actually get governed with the population rise, and 2021 it is this. But by now, if we will calculate, it will be somewhere close to 1300 cubic meter or so. Similarly, if utilizable water, we see it is 1122 BCM, where 690 BCM from the surface water and groundwater is around 432 BCM. Now, despite of this availability, where we see the availability of groundwater is not that much as it is there in case of the surface water. But contrary to this, the contribution of groundwater is nearly 62% in irrigation and 85% rural water supply and 45% in urban water supply. Agriculture consumes about 89% of total water resources in the country. So whatever the water which is utilizable water, around 89% we are using only for one thing, that is for agriculture sector. Our international trade is contributing to the large quantities of virtual water loss through the export of water intensive crops, whether it is through rice or through other water consuming crops, could be sugar and all other things. Despite that, many other industrial processes is also like that. And around 253 BCM of out of 690 BCM is stored. We can store only 253 BCM what we could store so far. That's only 36% of the availability of surface water. If we go with the water efficiency, then it is around 38%, while in case of the countries like Israel, Japan, China, and Taiwan, it is ranging in between 50 to 60%. Now, in case if we see in what other scenario it comes out, we are in 2015, 1.3 billion inhabitants are there in the country. Out of that, 33% is living in urban areas, and we are likely to grow close to 1.7 billion in 2050, whereas 50% will be living in urban areas. And keeping that in view, we are developing the smart cities. Now you see what is happening for the catering the water needs of these cities. For instance, in Chennai, Viranam Lake, we are providing the water from 235 kilometer, and also we are desalinating the 200 million liters per day in operation. Hyderabad, we are providing the water from Krishna River, which is 130 kilometer. Similarly, in Bangalore and Kaveri, we are providing 95 kilometer. Bhopal and Indore, in both the places, the water is being transported to 70 kilometers and it is being pumped. Now, if we see, India is already, Mr. Mohanty also indicated that we have got 17% of world population with meager 4% of world's water availability, which is for the resources part, and 2.6% of world's land area. Despite of that, we are consuming 1/4 of the globally available groundwater, and we can say we are consuming more than what China and US is doing as on date. So our consumption of water is 251 BCM in case of the this thing availability of the consumption of the groundwater is concerned. Now, if we see in what way the demand is rising, by 2008 the supply was 650 billion cubic meter and the demand was 634 billion cubic meter. But we are moving business as usual scenario, and by 2030 the demand is likely to be 744 BCM, and if we continue in the same way, in the same linear processes with the same most inefficient way of the water consumption, we are likely to touch the figure of 1498 billion cubic meter, and I am sorry, by the time we don't have that much water really to provide. So we should really change ourselves. There is also an impact of incidences of water-related disaster because of the climate change. There will be the skewed rainfall. There will be the floods, increased erosion and droughts because of this climate change. That also needs to be factored in. If with this all we go ahead, we'll see. And what is the position of the wastewater generated in the cities are. Then sewage generation is around 72,000 million liters per day. Out of that, the untreated sewage is around 132 million liters per day. And we have got a treatment capacity of 36,000 million liters per day. But this is the installed capacity. Despite of that, the treatment is something around 21,000 million liters per day. So around 72% of the sewage is officially untreated and disposed of in rivers, lakes, and groundwater, which is further contaminating the freshwater sources and contaminating the groundwater sources, lakes, and rivers. And then we are just initiating the other programs like National Mission Clean Ganga, River Conservation Plan, and all of that. If you see, this is the present scenario, what is happening, that is of surface water bodies in the country. And this is all happening because of this mismanagement of water. Now let us see what are the trend of the water cost for industries. If you see the cost of water per kiloliter for industrial purposes, then Delhi, because of the political intervention, it's too cheap, where it is something around 20 rupees per kiloliter. In Bangalore is also cheaper, Hyderabad and Chennai. So this is the cost of the industrial water prices. Now, seeing the situation, we can certainly see that water is becoming costly day by day, and it will be a difficult task for the industries to move ahead further if this situation continues. Now let us come to the basics of wastewater recycling. So what is happening? Reusing treated wastewater for beneficial purposes such as agriculture and landscape irrigation, industrial processes, domestic and non-potable reuse, and replenishing the groundwater basin that we can think of. Means they are the the best uses and can be tailored to meet the water quality requirement of plant reuse and can meet the water need in a very competitive cost structure. More water is available for beneficial purposes, reducing the pollution surface on groundwater if we put the same water in circulatory system. Now let us see what the intervention from the various government regulatory policy has happened in this case. In 2008, National Water Urban Sanitation Policy came. National Action Plan on Climate Change was really developed at that point of time. And then in 2011, National Water Mission came, and we just tried to put everything in such a circulatory way. By the time National Water Policy 2012 also was there, and it was thought of that the processes should be circulatory. In 2013, guidance manual of recycling and reuse of sewage was created, and then in 2014, Namami Gange program, Swachh Bharat Mission, all was launched. As I told you that we are creating the wastewater and letting it allow to contaminate further the freshwater bodies and systems. Then Ministry of Power Gazette notification came, which was saying that the wastewater should be compulsorily used for the thermal power plant, and 10% of that should be there. We also advocated the National Water Framework Law, where the sanctuaries for the recharging of the groundwater and wastewater recircular use should be there. All this is started. And in 2018, individual state water reuse policies, that is Gujarat, J&K, and many more states started. So by the time many states started that the circulatory use of water should be there. Now, if we see there are the balancing treatment with recycled water. We have got the wastewater, we have got the all sorts of the processes. If it is to be used for irrigation, only secondary treatment is sufficient. If it is restricted for urban reuse, it can be tertiary treatment. It can be industrial non-potable tertiary treatment with membrane filtration. If indirect potable reuse is there, nitrogen and phosphorus control could be there, and further treatment is required, then we can go for RO and disinfection. So the wastewater put with various treatment methods, if the cost is added in those treatment methods, it can be made use of to a substantial extent. And then additional assured source of water. This is the assured source of water. It can meet around 80% of industrial water requirement, and stable cost versus rising cost of fresh water can be developed. Because you see, the wastewater would not be that costly as the costly will be the fresh water. Now let us come to economic and financial benefits of wastewater recycling and reuse. Let us see in what way it can be economically used. Now, potential in agriculture. A treated urban wastewater, if 38,000 million liters per day, would provide around 14 billion cubic meter of irrigation water, and this is sufficient for 11th plan major and medium irrigation potential. What has been created, 31% of that could have been created with this wastewater. Or for that instance, minor irrigation potential, what has been created, 37% could have been created. Now, potential irrigate an area ranging between 1 to 3 million hectares. So this much potential is there. Except this, there are the other advantages like nutrient potential. It has got nutrient potential in wastewater, which ranges from 0.63 to 0.73 million tons, tons per million liters of per day. Up to 40% reduction nutrient load is possible, and it can reduce the fertilizer requirement and reduce the government fertilizer subsidy burden by around rupees 100 crore per annually. Now, if we see that we need to pump the water, there is a reduction in groundwater requirement for irrigation, resulting in energy saving, which is around 30% in wastewater if it is used in terms of irrigation. Then reduction in groundwater pumping, which is around 600 crore annually. Now, if we move further and see what benefits, because we have got all big towns and cities, where the wastewater is getting generated. Then in case of Indore, where the crop cultivated is generally wheat, vegetable, increase in yield would be 30 to 40%. Decrease in fertilizer will be 50%. Of course, we have to make a little more use of the pesticide because of the nitrogen, phosphorus, and other elements over there. But average annual incremental benefit would be around 36,000 per hectare. Similarly, in Nagpur, in Jaipur, in Bangalore, in Ahmedabad, in Delhi and Kanpur, a lot of the potential is there in terms of if we are going to reuse the wastewater. Use of treated wastewater for agriculture can help farmers increase their savings. Case studies reveal an average increase by around 17,000 per hectare per annum on account of water availability and reduced fertilizer usage. Potential increase of about 30% in farmers' income when the farmer use wastewater alone. Channelizing the entire quantum of treated wastewater towards agriculture has the potential to support 2 million farmers. So I think this is the high time while we should really move towards the agriculture sector for using this wastewater. Now the industrial water requirement constitute almost 10% of non-irrigation water demand in the country and is expected to increase to almost 17% by 2050. There are the incidences that while our industries face shutdown because of the water scarcity in Maharashtra and in Coimbatore and many other places in Tamil Nadu and in Karnataka. Now, industrial reuse of wastewater presents many benefits to both utilities and the industrial customer. The CPHU manual 2013 already laid down how the treated wastewater can be used for many processes, that is cooling, that is boiler feed, process water. It is estimated that about 80% of urban wastewater could be collected and treated by 2030, and there would be a total volume of around 17 BCM per year, equivalent to almost 75% of the projected industrial demand in 2025. So this is the opportunity which I said that it should be there. Today we are making state-wise reuse applications in various places, but they are only landscape and in various activities. They are only incidental sort of the application, but an intensive application is needed. With that, I will just conclude my my speech, and I really sincerely thank you. And I will say this is an opportunity of wastewater, and there is an economic benefits associated with that. Industry should move towards that for achieving and for harnessing this assured water supply. Similarly, the peri-urban area where the agriculture area is there, they should also move towards this. With that, I sincerely convey my thanks for organizing such a webinar on this is the subject which is very much needed in today's time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mishra, for this very extensive, elaborate, detailed presentation covering the entire country in terms of technologies, the financial aspects. And I think you have very nicely underscored the need for, treating the sewage water, particularly 72% of which goes untreated as per the, available statistics. Water cost for industries is increasing significantly. There's a bad situation of surface water bodies, no doubt about it. But all said and done, we have to continue. There are a lot of lessons to be learned also from countries like Singapore, where, as a matter of fact, not only that every drop of rainwater is saved, but at the same time, every drop of wastewater is also treated, basically, and treated also to the extent of, I would say, treated also to the extent of the purity level is so high that they are also using it also for drinking purposes with a name of what they call new water. We in Nilgiris in India are also in a small way at a micro level treating the wastewater and supplying it for the irrigation purposes, where the farmers are, I would say that, growing very exotic vegetables, and the farmers' output has really, productivity has gone up by almost like 20%, when also increase of their incomes. I think we are very happy. There are a lot of good experiments, which as a matter of fact are available in the country. You have highlighted them, and I think we should be able to really gain from all that you have really presented. My next, I would say that speaker is Dr. Harpreet Kandra from Federation University, Australia. He also happens to be adjunct professor at Chitkara University, India, a research professional with very extensive experience in water management, environmental management, environmental reporting, data management, policy analysis, teaching and training. So water management, life cycle assessment, water quality analysis, they are all his thrust areas. Graduated with PhD in the field of stormwater treatment and harvesting at the Civil Engineering Department of Monash University, Clayton in 2014. He is going to talk in a very interesting way, common sense for water security, which is equal to circular economy. I think the floor is yours, Dr. Kandra. I think we'll invite you for the presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. I will start sharing my screen. I hope all of you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Singh, and thank you, the 3R Waste Foundation, for giving me this opportunity to present my view today. I would also convey my regards for my fellow panelists, Mr. Mohanty, Mr. Avinash Mishra, and Dr. Indra Khurana, Mr. Rajneesh Shareen, and Ms. Anupama Sood. Thanks a lot for you being here. I'm going to dedicate this presentation today that I'm making to the World Water Day, which is coming up shortly, and also to the elections that are happening in 5 states. The results are coming out, and I don't know whether water security or environmental management was on the manifestos of any of the election parties. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I'm going to present the aspect of circular economy in context of water management with a different lens. And my hypothesis is that circular economy is common sense, and common sense is not so common. Now, with that background, my talk is today trying to structure basically and focus mainly on illustrations to demonstrate the gaps in practice. And I'm going to focus more on urban water management because I have about 12 to 15 minutes. But through my illustrations today, I will try to demonstrate that there are a lot of possibilities for us to share better practices and improve the way we manage the water at an urban level. And I think I will be able to sensitize the concept of circular economy through this hypothesis of mine. Now, for me, the biggest weakness, I think, is understanding the problem, acknowledging the problem, and taking responsibility.
Your screen is not really visible. Your screen, perhaps I can move your slides, please.
Dr. Singh, can you see my screens, or is there a problem?
No, there's a problem. Perhaps I think it is only saying crystal clear audio, even if the video is not.
Give me a second, sorry. I don't know what happened. Let's see. Okay, here we are. Okay, so I think this was where I started from, and I will quickly run through these slides once again. This was the hypothesis that I was mentioning, and this is the biggest weakness in the current arrangement that I wanted to highlight. Now, the traditional understanding, which is again a linear understanding, has focused more on liters per capita demand only. And we have been using these numbers as suggested to us about 50, 70 years ago about how much of water should be provided per person per day. But the new focus and understanding in this era where climate change has been accepted as a major problem affecting water management is to broaden the concept of water management, to talk about water security, to understand that water security is related to energy security and food security, to also understand that water security affects the quality of life in more than one ways, to also understand that water security is impacted by the changing climate. Water security and hygiene are a very, very important thing to understand. And most governments are now saying we have not been out of pandemic, but now we need to recognize this as an endemic which will be with us forever. And if it is going to be with us forever, hygiene will be a major issue, and water will play a major role in ensuring that hygiene can be maintained. Now again, sharing the water for rivers, for nature, for religious and cultural needs is also very, very vital. So the entire definition of water management is no more the talk about LPCD, it is much broader talk. If you look at how water management has evolved in some of the best countries who are leaders of water management, you will see initially we were talking about a water supply city, and then we started severing our cities, and then we started draining our cities. But I think most of the developing countries who are currently struggling with water management are actually focusing on only these three aspects and more of these two aspects. They have not got to other areas, but the developed countries, as Dr. Singh was talking about, and as pointed out by other speakers, are moving towards a bigger picture where they are trying to integrate water management in anything that they think of or plan or design. And now I will just talk about what is not working by giving you some quick examples to highlight the fact that it's all common sense. Now, most of us agree that what gets measured, gets managed, gets done, and we do that almost every day for most of our resources. It could be our fuel bills, it could be the stock market, it could be how much data I have used on my phone or on my Wi-Fi connection, my electricity consumption, the real estate market and its prices. But when it comes to water, we do not know how much water are we wasting in our pipelines. Let's talk about one of the most progressive cities that I come from, Chandigarh, and I looked at the water bill that my parents get issued by the Municipal Corporation Chandigarh, and I was amazed to see that my parents, even though they are big users of water, the water consumption was about 24 kiloliters for two people over a period of 4 months, and I don't trust those numbers. So certainly water metering is an issue. Either the water meter is faulty, or the way the water meter is being read or charged is incorrect. And the bill that they have got for about 4 months of consumption is only 89 Indian rupees. I compared it with my water bill in Australia, in Melbourne, and I pay about $2.07 for every day of my water consumption. And my family of 3 consumes 216 liters of water in a day. And if you divide 216 by 3, it is about 72 liters per person per day. Now, again, our water bill is very well laid out. It talks about what is the total family consumption, and based on how many people live in the family, you can make an estimate of what is the water consumption per person per day. So, the user is being charged properly, the user's meter is working accurately, and the user gets to know how much they are consuming. And the guideline in Melbourne in particular is that we should not be consuming more than 155 liters of water per person per day. Now, because of this problem at the urban level, you can clearly see that if you compare India with other countries like China, US, etc., you will see that our withdrawals are very, very high. Our groundwater withdrawal is very higher for a comparative population, and our water rates are very, very low, among us the lowest in the world. Our estimates are outdated. You might say that we need 5 liters of water for drinking, 5 liters of water for cooking, 55 liters of water for bathing, and I don't think we should be using 55 liters of water for bathing. And we are not talking about the fact that these days most people will put a RO filter in their house which will be treating potable water, and I estimated that for the RO filter that my parents have in Chandigarh. And for about 6 liters of water that was being produced by the RO plant, we were wasting 18 liters of water. Now, we do not have a family car in Chandigarh. My parents can't drive, they are very old. But our neighbors, all of them, I've seen they have 2 or 3 cars per family, and all of them are washing those cars on a daily basis. And how much water do we use for washing each car is not figuring out here. So I think these estimates need to be relooked at. If you talk about environmental water, we try to kill our rivers by extracting all the water from them. And since our supplies are intermittent, even in a city like Chandigarh, we get water for only 4 to 6 hours a day. About 10-15 years ago, it was 24/7 water supply. And if you have intermediate supplies or intermittent supplies, the problem is that people will store water, throw away the water in the evening when a fresh supply comes, and that's additional wastage. We have not understood fit for purpose water use, and we think we need good quality of water for everything, for bathing, for washing my house or cleaning my house, for washing my car. And if we do not understand fit for purpose water use, we will not be reusing the discarded water from a reverse osmosis unit in my house and using it to wash my utensils, dishes, or even washing my car, or mopping my floor. So we need to be open about using alternative sources, and that should also include treated storm water or treated rainwater or treated wastewater. Now, this is the alternative water source that I was talking about. And if you really have to start using this alternative water source, I think the house help that we have, all of us have some house helps, they will have to be trained, and they will play a big role in utilizing the discard of the reverse osmosis unit in our houses. So again, water use efficiency has to be understood. We need to start thinking about buying dishwashers and washing machines and putting showers and using buckets and mugs in our houses in such a way that we can imbibe the principles of water use efficiency. And I don't think, even people in Singapore or people in Australia will be using 55 liters of water for a shower every day or for bathing. And my estimate is that in my own household, we have a shower which works for, which we run for about 5 to 6 minutes for a shower. And it takes only about 5 liters of water maximum per minute to discharge the flow for a good shower. Again, energy efficiency and water efficiency has not been understood by the real estate development. I'm currently in Chandigarh. I've been going around and looking at some wonderful real estate projects that are going in. Apartments are being sold for about 1.75 to 3 crores. And if you ask the sales guy, what is the energy efficiency of the building? What is the water efficiency of the building? What are we going to do with the harvested rainwater? Are we going to take the storm water generated in the area where the apartments are coming? Are they going to use that? They do not have enough information, and they are not trained to talk about these things. Again, the same philosophy that I talked about urban water management is applicable to other sectors. And agriculture withdraws more than 80% of the total water use, and the overall agricultural use efficiency is quite low. If you look at the industrial water use efficiency, again, India needs to relook at it and needs to invest adequate resources in using the water appropriately and closing the loop. So in a nutshell, conventional water cycle will not work. We really need dual piping systems for our expanding cities. And as Mr. Mohanty mentioned, a lot of people will start living in the urban areas. And that's where, if new housing is coming, it has to have dual pipeline systems with proper risk assessment being done. We recycle, we conserve each and everything, be it clothes, and we get utensils for them, be it the newspapers that come to our houses. We are very, very well known for this logo, Dada Le Pota Barte. But the point is, when it comes to the most important resource, water, we do not understand circular economy. So it's a common sense problem to me. And I think, our management has become more like a damagement. Managers are becoming damagers actually, because they are not properly trained, and we have not taken a top down and a bottom up approach to solve the problem. That is where a circular economy is very, very vital. And circular economy certainly is not about the following. It is not an outdated understanding about water management considered to be a linear and a traditional problem. Again, circular economy doesn't say that you need to use a drop of water only once. It has to go back, get treated, and put into use for a fit for purpose water use. Again, we do not need to think that there's only one source of supply. It's only one problem. It's a temporary problem. It's a seasonal problem. It's not a seasonal problem. It's not a problem for one species, the human beings only. It's a problem for our rivers as well, and for the aquatic life in the rivers as well. It is also not a single generations problem. Again, circular economy doesn't say that only one person or the politicians or people managing the water are the culprit. All of us are culprits because of which we are into this problem. This problem cannot be solved by a single person or a single government or a single political party or a single industry consumer group. It cannot be solved by one set of professionals. You have to think about change management. You have to think about social fabric of water management. And again, solving water problem using 100-year-old approaches will not work. And that is where you don't need to have one flat tariff rate. So again, it's not a linear or approach. We need a circular approach. And I think the way forward, and these are some examples, I'm not claiming these are comprehensive examples. We need to integrate the water cycle using a systems approach, and there are a lot of system savings if we start using demand management and reuse in supplying the water. And I think the key need is integration and thinking from the dimension of systems thinking, not a linear event oriented thinking where you get the water from somewhere, you treat it and send it to the consumers, and then you pick up that water, you treat it, and then discharge it. You have to think in a loop structure to make circular economy work. These messages that I talked about very briefly are equally applicable to all water users, all water uses, all economies, and all other natural resources that we manage. And these are being implemented in other parts of the world by different names: integrated water management, integrated water resource management, watershed management in an integrated way. Some countries call it integrated river basin management, urban water management, depending upon the scale, total water management, adaptive water management. There are a lot of names for some of these concepts that are being used for circular economy in context of urban water management. Again, a lot of tools are required. They work hand in hand with the approach of circular economy or a better water management. And I've listed some of these here, and all of these tools need to work hand in hand because they are feeding information, creating information for us to take a more informed decision to manage our water resources. And some of these names have already been taken by our previous presenters, so I will not get into that in interest of time as well, because I was allotted 12 to 15 minutes to talk, so I will be brief here. I also want to stress on the fact that one size does not fit all. So all those things that I have talked about will not be equally applicable to all the cities, all the towns of the big India with a different cultural diversity. We really need to find specific solutions for specific cities depending upon the problem in that particular city and the nature of consumption in that city. I think that is broadly what I had. I think for me, the key message is that for circular economy to work, the first thing that we need to understand is that waste is a resource out of place, and we really need to start valuing the water. And if we start doing that, obviously things will become much better, and we will start trying to find out the use for the wastewater that we are generating and for the wastage that we are creating with the water use. And again, obviously, we need to integrate other elements to make water management a really workable thing in this new era where climate change is massively affecting water security. I think that's broadly what I had. I know I have been very quick and brief. So this is my email address. If anyone wants to give us a feedback or, take this further for further discussions or implementations or investigations, I will be very, very keen to get in touch. I think I will stop here and pass it on to Dr. Kulwant Singh. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kandra. That is really wonderful. I think you have touched very nicely I would say that micro level issues as well, which are so very important at household level and also at city level. I do remember about 15 years ago, when we jointly did a project in the state of Madhya Pradesh for 4 cities. Our focus was largely on what we call water demand management. And the focus was, and we found very interestingly that in the city of Indore, which is more like the commercial capital of Madhya Pradesh, 100,000 houses did not have a water meter. And the major, I would say that consumers of water, mainly some of these hotels and hospitalities, were using water without any meter, basically that. And I think you have very nicely pointed out that we really need to change the norms as well of 135 liters per capita per day. Circular economy, no doubt, is used. It has to be used. You are very nicely presented saying using water not one time, but several times, several times, I would say that. I think the message is very clear. We need to bring in water use efficiency, not only in homes, not only in agriculture, not only in industry, but also in every use for which water is really put. I think, we'll continue with our next speaker, Dr. Indra Khurana. She is the policy lead, resource scarcity, food security, and climate change at IPA Global Private Limited. Until 2013, she was the director, policy and partnerships, WaterAid, when we also happened to be working together. During my UN Habitat days. Since August 2021, she is the chairperson of the Indian Himalayan Research Basins Council, a growing network of concerned citizens linking the hearts, minds, and action of people with rivers in 23 states of India. She is a PhD in biochemistry, and she has written a lot. Basically, I'll not like to detail out everything, but I would particularly like to mention that triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic in August 2020, she co-authored a short book, Nature Rejuvenation for Eternal Development. Through her writing, she remains committed to highlight the issues of water resource management, rainwater conservation, agriculture, and food security. She'll be presenting on the subject of community-centered approaches for water security in rural India. And rural India faces different kinds of problems. While agriculture uses water most inefficiently in many ways, I think at the household level, there are different kinds of challenges. The floor is yours, Dr. Khurana.
Thank you so much, Dr. Singh, for this opportunity, and also having a presentation on looking at the rural water security issues in a discussion where we are looking at largely at urban scenario. And I recall when I had a discussion with you on this, you mentioned that when we are talking of water security for India, it's a combination of rural plus urban. And unless we have a water secure rural India, we will have continued distress migration to urban areas, which again comes with its own set of challenges of burdening the created or planned infrastructure. Dr. Singh, I'm going to try to share my screen, but I think there is some problem from my end. So it could be that I may request you all to.
I'll request my team to help out. Perhaps I think that will be very nice.
Can you see now?
No, we are not yet able to see your screen, not your PowerPoint.
Because it's got like I am screen sharing.
Well, let me just request my people. Actually, they should be able to help you
Yeah.
out.
You're not able to see now?
No, not yet.
Okay.
What is it that you are showing on the
I'm
screen?
showing the first slide, community-centered approaches for water security.
It's not.
Okay.
Kindly share the presentation of Dr. Khurana. They are having a difficulty. नहीं हो रही ना.
I'm
Yes.
looking at you. It's looking here like I'm screen sharing, but I'm not sure why it's not happening.
If you can share her presentation. So my team is.
Yeah. Ma'am, can you remove the screen? I can share on your behalf.
Now, kindly do that. Kindly.
Yes. So
Yes.
is my screen visible?
It's
Yes.
very nice.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yes.
Kindly move
Yes,
to the next slide. Ji.
Okay, so there was a brief mention of COVID-19 by one of the speakers before me. So I just like to start with that, and basically I have a question for all of us: that did we really learn from what are we learning from what COVID-19 really taught us? As we all know, it was a tiny virus which actually broke our backs and brought us all to our knees. And it affected our education, the way we were used to living, healthcare, all of this changed. And the losses that resulted because of this pandemic are colossal. And we are still actually counting and licking our wounds and counting the losses that we have had to bear because of this pandemic. If we go to the next slide, we will be able to
Kindly move the next slide. Kindly move the next slide. Yes, please.
Yeah, so if you could just put it in the center. Yes, thank you. So if we look at the global burden of the pandemic, the estimated cost as of August 2020 was between 8.1 and 15.8 trillion US dollars. So it's a huge economic cost that we had to bear. There was a report by Oxfam in January 2021, which said that there was an increase in inequality across almost all countries of the world where this pandemic hit, which I think was in all countries. And while it was easier for the top people with resources and the rich to kind of make up for the economic losses, it was going to take even longer for the people who did not have access to, who were not so fortunate. If you look at bridging the gender gap, it actually has increased from pre-COVID-19. So that means a whole generation more is now required if you want to bridge this gender gap. So previously, the estimate was 99.5 years. It's after COVID, it's now come to 135.6 years. So there's a huge widened, the gap in gender disparity has widened. Significant populations are running out of food or have reduced their consumption. And these were reports from the FAO and from the United Nations, which said that there was a serious crisis for access to food and affordability to food. And if we talk about India could lose up to 4% of its GDP, up to 4% of its GDP and up to 8% of its productivity due to child malnutrition, not child nutrition, but child malnutrition. And there was the largest disruption of education systems in human history. And this affected nearly 1.6 million learners across 200 plus countries. So there's a reason why I'm just wanted to draw the attention of the participants to these very alarming figures. And for that, I would like to go to the next slide. Next, yeah, could you just place it up? Yeah. So I think it's important to understand that why did we have this pandemic, this COVID-19 pandemic? It very clearly actually brought out the interconnectedness between humans and nature and the well-being of both. COVID-19, as we know, was caused by a virus that jumped from animals to humans. Why this happened, we're still unclear, whether it was in the lab or whether it was due to some other deforestation reasons. But if we see that almost 75% of the new infectious diseases that the world is facing today is due to this transfer of zoonotic viruses, where the virus moves from an animal host to a human host. And this mostly happens because we have destroyed the natural environment and because of deforestation. Deforestation is also causing climate change, biodiversity loss, decline in water resources, and the emergence of new diseases and pandemics. And there have been several ecologists who have warned that India is actually vulnerable to several pandemics because of the scale at which ecological damage is taking place in our country. If we go to the next slide, that will kind of bring to the fore the importance to realize the complexities between of development. And if we actually review how we perceive development, and it's supposed to mean that it's development is for improving the standard of living and the quality of life. But what happens when this very purpose is defeated? I think at that point of time, we need to realize that clearly something is wrong. And several of the speakers before me pointed out about the state of water resources, about the groundwater pollution, for example, that existed. The way water, the monsoon pattern is going to be affected because of climate change, and many other factors because of development interventions that we have taken. And I think the pandemic clearly brought about a very strong point that this paradigm that we are following is perhaps not sustainable, and it's also not equitable, which was again brought out by several reports and even by scientific experts. Clearly, this model is not going to be good either for the planet, and that includes us humans, and it also includes the natural resources. So it's important to realize that the development and the impact of the development is not unilayered. And there were discussions about, the linear approach to access and management of water vis-a-vis a circular approach. I think here also we need to realize that if we do large-scale interventions, it's going to have a certain kind of negative impact, and whether do we really want those interventions is something that we have to think about. And this again also brings out the importance of water security for a secure and peaceful future. And one example was also highlighted by Dr. Kendra when he said about the need for water for hygiene, which was reinforced by the COVID-19 pandemic. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Just I want to show in the rural area when we speak about water insecurity, what does this mean? On the left, you'll see pictures about overcrowding, and this is Jhansi station, where because there was a drought, people had just crowded and populated the station, and they were then just filling into the train looking for, this was distress migration. People were entering into trains even through windows and trying to hit the nearby urban areas, be it another town within Madhya Pradesh or UP or Delhi, Faridabad. So just moving out because there was a drought, and because of which there was crop failure, there was a drinking water crisis, poverty, hunger, Also a breakdown in access to healthcare, because once you go as a distressed migrant to an urban center, a urban town, it's very difficult to access the healthcare. This also put women and children at extreme risk and in vulnerable positions. The education of children were affected. Even power plants had to shut down and industry has to shut down, which was some examples that Mr. Mishra cited of Mumbai and in Coimbatore. And then the infrastructure that is created, if like say for providing water, for irrigation or for water, drinking water, if there's no water at the end of the pipe, the infrastructure is not going to be of much use. Could we go to the next slide? Yeah, so it's important to realize the implications of this water insecurity. And here is an example of having, the floods that are occurring in more and more cities, in more and more rural areas, and in more areas in traditionally flood affected areas like Bihar and Assam. And so it affects this, this disturbance in the water cycle, and the way we are managing water affects both people where there is less water, and also affects where there is too much of water and in floods. Because if you look at the area of flood affected by floods in Bihar, there's a massive increase in the area as compared to about 50 years ago. Let's go to the next slide. I won't spend much time because you already spoke about the water quality issues, and we also spoke. There are also now reports which say that 70% of our surface water resources are polluted. Mr. Mishra in his slide mentioned that only 30% of the sewage is treated. Half of our groundwater reserves are contaminated, which is causing death and disease. Arsenicosis, fluorosis, excess, heavy metals. We even have radioactive elements in our groundwater. And now it's turning out that this water is unsafe even for agricultural purposes and for meeting industrial needs. So India really needs to think how it's going to basically address this ticking time bomb of water quality. If you go to the next slide. So against this background, I'd just like to highlight some of the principles when we are looking at how can we achieve rural water security. And I think it's amply clear now that this is only be possible if the communities are involved in the planning, in the decision making, in the implementation, and in the monitoring stage. And when we talk of the 6 lakh plus villages in India, and given the ecology that the tremendous ecological diversity that we have in this country, in terms of differing geography, different monsoon pattern, again to which is linked the culture and food habits of the people. Unless we have local decentralized models with people's involvement, it's difficult to achieve water security issue in rural areas. It also needs to a model that acknowledges the importance of respecting nature, not only looking at nature as a kind of something which you can extract from, but also looking at how can you respect it, how you can rejuvenate it. Also, the model needs to respect traditional wisdom, because if we look at the different 16 different ecological zones of India, each of them have their own traditional management practices of how to harvest the rainwater, how to conserve the water, what are the lifestyles and the livelihoods that can be adopted in that particular ecology. So there is a need to again revive on a large scale this traditional wisdom of India, because that also looks at models and adopting practices that are locally appropriate, and it empowers the people and helps involve them. If we go to the next slide, I think another one main issue that we need to look at is how do we respect water. And this is a quotation from Liberia, where they say that when you see clouds gathering, prepare to catch rainwater. And if we talk of a country like India, we are blessed with rainwater, with rainfall, And we also have a very rich tradition of water conservation practices, which I just explained in the earlier slide. So this is one thing that we need to know, that whenever there is a rain, we need to see how best we can capture that rain so that there is no runoff. Our groundwater aquifers are replenished and our surface water bodies are replenished. If we go to the next slide, this just shows some examples the how of different corner of India you have different water harvesting structures. If you look at the structure on the top left, it's called a chauka, CHAUKA. This is in near Jaipur, in Laporia village of Jaipur, where these troughs are made, and when the rain falls, it is captured in these troughs, and that helps augment the water resources and also helps increase the soil moisture. Then we have a structure on the right, which is a check dam. This structure is from Gujarat. If you look at the next slide, this is an example. If you see the building, this is actually of there was a central government guest house in Shimla, and Shimla was running out of water a decade ago, and that's where they had a huge campus, and that's where they began to harvest rainwater and use that rainwater for meeting the needs of this guest house, and that actually helped them augment their water supply. The picture on the top is a system of terraced agriculture from Uttarakhand, where the water is then, you can have the system and where the water feeds into all the terraces. The example below is from a structure in Bundelkhand region of Madhya Pradesh. So this is just citing that how different technologies are available to suit different topographies. The next slide. So this is not something that is there only in a developing country like India. Other countries have also harvested rainwater, be it Japan, Germany, Singapore, Australia, China, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Pakistan, and Tanzania. So I think people the world over have realized the importance of capturing rain and use it for different purposes. And it's important that we can have a cross-sharing with them and learn from them. If we go to the next slide, I think if you look at how India was managing its water, it was, if you look at the traditional wisdom, it was looking at how we can regenerate the ecology, water and nature. Again, these are some examples. The one on where the women are there, that's from Nandurbar, when the migrants went back after the lockdown. So they actually looked at reforesting the hills. The one in the center is from is the rejuvenation of Agarni River in Maharashtra. The one on the right is an example from Alwar district of Rajasthan. If you look at the male labor in the bottom row, that's again male migrants when they went back to UP during the lockdown. They cleaned up a river channel and tried to revive the river. The one in the center is a revived river from Alwar district of Rajasthan. And the one at the bottom right is the Bhungru, which is a very interesting system promoted in saline, where there's saline groundwater in parts of Mehsana in Gujarat, where you harvest the rainwater and it floats like a lens above the saline water, and that is again used by the people for drinking and for agricultural purposes. So tremendous richness in this country, and how we can make our rural areas water secure. So this brings me to the point that we need to respect the diversity that we have in this country, the diversity of the ecology, of the rainfall, the people, and the agriculture. I think it's very important too that the agricultural, what we produce actually follows the monsoon pattern and the water availability, rather than the promotion of crops, water guzzling crops like paddy and sugarcane in areas where there is a shortage of water. If we go to the next slide. Okay, so Dr. Singh, how much time do we have? I have
just 1 more minute.
Okay, so then I will just skip the next 2 slides. I just wanted to highlight, you can go to the next 2 slides, that we need to understand the importance of rivers and their connection with groundwater if you're talking of water security. Groundwater and surface water, that the connection between the two, the symbiotic relationship between the two needs to be maintained. Because when if there is a flood, for example, then it is the river bed and the river plains that helps soak up the excess water, which then replenishes the groundwater. And in times of lean periods, then it is this groundwater, when replenished, which provides the base flow to the rivers and provides water to the people. So this connection between the surface and the groundwater needs to be maintained. We could just go to the next slide. We can remove next slide. Next slide. Yeah, just I have two slides now. So one is basically, if you look at traditional water wisdom, it was actually based on 5 R's. It was based on looking at respect for water, and when you respect the water, then you with that bhavna, or that feeling that you have, then you are able to actually use the water judiciously. You are able to keep it clean. You are very careful that you don't pollute it. The other R was rejuvenate. So whatever water sources you have, rejuvenate that water resource, give back more to nature than what you have taken. And this was in addition to what the recycle, reduce, and retreat that we're talking about when we talk about 5 R's. And this is what the Indian Himalayan River Basin Council is working for. It's basically working towards connecting the hearts, minds, and the action of people with rivers, so that the streams and the rivers are rejuvenated, and through that groundwater is rejuvenated and the livelihoods are rejuvenated. So I'll stop now because I think there's some of the activities that we plan to do for this, and I look forward to engagement and suggestions later on, maybe from this August gathering here, to how we can rejuvenate our rivers in the Himalayan River Basin. Thank you once again, Dr. Kulwant Singh, for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, giving us a wonderful perspective of how communities really can be really empowered, and how we can have community-centered approaches for managing our waters in, I would say that, different parts of the rural India. Locally approaches that empowers people and involves them, it's very, very important. I think capturing rainwater, no doubt, particularly in our regions like Rajasthan, that becomes very, very important. We still are doing it like that. And you very rightly said that we are able to rejuvenate ecology, water, and nature, through these approaches per se. Very surely, I think these are very important if we want a kind of water security so far as India is concerned, and very particularly the communities are concerned. So I think we will move on. Our next speaker is Mr. Rajneesh Sareen. Mr. Sareen works as the Program Director for Sustainable Habitat Program with the Center for Science and Environment, New Delhi, with working experience of more than 2 decades on sustainability in the urban and in the built environment. He's an urban environmental planner from School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi. And I think he's going to speak on resource efficiency and circularity in the built environment. One of the, I think, most important areas for us, very particularly for the cities and towns of India. If we have to really ensure water security, we have to ensure resource efficiency and circularity. The floor is yours, Rajesh Sareen ji.
Thank you, Dr. Kulwant. I need, okay, the sharing rights are there.
Kindly do that, yes. Excellent.
So hopefully you're able to see the presentation.
We are able to see it, yes. Kindly do that, kindly go on.
So good afternoon, everyone. And Dr. Kulwant has given you a little brief of what this talk is all about. But briefly, I think all the speakers, starting from Dr. Dr. Mohanty to Dr. Indra, everybody has spoken about the visible water which is there in this world. I'm actually going to focus on something which is an invisible water which exists around us. So like there is a process according to which we work is like rainwater, then SUDs come, then WSUDP come. And then finally, there is something called a green infrastructure which starts appearing in front of us. So what exactly is this variation and how this invisible water works around us? I'm going to actually brief in this 10 minutes to you that how it happens. I'm going to touch across the three basic areas. One is the construction and demolition waste, thermal comfort, as well as the indigenous technology. Why I'm going to speak about it is I'm going to show up all the relationships where they are. So we do understand with this currently resources, how scarce they are and what kind of issues and concerns are already there. And as well as there is a huge amount of variation which we expect due to climate change in terms of temperature as well as rainfall. So the real finance minister, which is of our country, is going to behave in a very different way. And that's what is being shown in the rainfall trends as well as in terms of rising heat, which is around us. So now both these scenarios are working, you can say, against as compared to, and really put it back to the picture to us that we need to think about something which is more sustainable and bringing up principles of circularity to great extent. Like these, some of the slides which I'm running in the backgrounds are giving you some of the facts and figures that, okay, the world is changing and there is a climate change which is impacting us. So why I'm focusing on a built environment, particularly on housing, because what we expect is in any such kind of housing environment, what is going to happen in future is that primarily it's going to be more hot or heat which is going to be around us, and as well as there could be more precipitation which we're going to see. And I think the initial results are very much visible to us that we get rainfall maybe equivalent to what we get in few days, in a day or in a particular hour. And that's what leads to, we do have a quantities of water with us, but we do not have a space and storages which are. So I'm not focusing on any of those elements of rainwater harvesting and other. I think more or less, mostly all the speakers is covered. Try to see that what best we can do. So what I'm looking at is that what is the next which we need to look at? Like, for example, what kind of housing which we are building right now, it's not about one or two house or a single apartment or a single house which we're building. We are, for example, looking at the housing. For example, this is coming from Hyderabad, around 15,000 houses, which means roughly around 62,000 people living in a dimension which has been created by one person, maybe a kind of a design or feature which is available. Like this is another example coming from Rajasthan. Here we are almost talking about 3,000 apartments and roughly around 12,000. Resident fate is going to be decided by the decision whatever we take. Now this decision doesn't happen only when you get the position. The decision starts from when you start extracting the resources to finally to your common utilities in terms of building operations, energies, and everything is all linked with it. So until unless you are really well thought of the 3R principles altogether at every stage of it, then later on what we talk about is all about end of pipe treatments. So end of pipe treatment will always may or may not proceed to the requirements which we have. So we have to bring in this 3R at every stage of well-being which is there. Like for example, when we do not think about the waste-wise, I'm just giving you one example where the CND comes in. Today, to produce a little bit of value, we have consumed almost a huge amount of mass and as well as produce a lot of carbon. So water and energy makes a nexus with each other, and the materials are one of the factors which needs to be taken in account. Like, for example, there's one picture which is onto the site talks about that we are even importing the sands from the countries. That's the kind of scenario where we are right now. So the construction waste, for example, should not become waste. Then it has to become a resource to us. Until unless it's not being processed, what happens is how it makes a relationship with water, it's here. Because when you do not take care of your building waste properly, eventually it lands up into the sponges of the top. So whatever water bodies we are talking about, whatever the systems we are looking at, it's all which is being choked right now because of the building construction waste. With whatever best initiatives we may have, still we are going to lack the spaces, and this is going to be a perennial problem. Until unless we do not solve this, the next step will not happen. Now let me go to another thing, which is water G, which is water and energy together. Now, why water and energy needs to be studied together? Reason for that is we require water for energy, we require energy for water, and we actually require water G for comfort. So all these three phenomena work together. So if you are trying to save energy, in terms of, or even if you're trying to work onto materials, effectively you are reducing the demand on water to a great extent. For example, 1.8 liters approximately is the water which is with the best of the equipments available that we produce for producing 1 kilowatt hour of electricity. We require that much of water, and considering the kind of even the worst plants which we may be having, this value may go up further, maybe to 3 or 4 or 5 liters effectively. So that means whatever you save on energy effectively saves a huge amount of invisible water, which we call it. So for example, this is an example coming from Narora atomic power station. So not only that you save water with energy, you save water, you also bring in a lot of, like this is Gangetic dolphin, which is finding a habitat because now we require a water as in coolant in this particular case. So there is a nexus which exists within our urban area. So we need to understand that, okay, there are visible waters and then there is an invisible water which needs to be focused on. Like, for example, this is coming, maybe Harpreet will be happy to see this. It's coming from Chandigarh, where effectively the comfort is also coming from water and energy together as a combination. So adaptive thermal comfort, recently what has been done, like there is an ecology, passive energy and well-being. So all your rainwater harvesting DWATs goes at one side, then the passive energy comes in, and then well-being in terms of ventilation and all these makes relationship in an urban setup to us. So what is happening, India has done a recently cooling action plan. Under that, they are looking at that, okay, we need to control these temperatures which are rising, because effectively that leads to maybe a bad material choice, or also because of the energy issues with regard. So recently, considering this, there is an amendment which has been done in our guidelines as well as in the model building bylaws. What are the focus areas? The issues are joined together. Like, for example, urban forestry, green transport, cool roofs, water sensitive urban design, cool materials, shading, and all these are the common strategy which are being looked at. Now, if these are the common strategy, why they are being connected together? Because the larger issue which we are going to come now, which we need to focus more on, is the temperature rise as well as the precipitation load which is going to come to us. So we've done a quick survey around in some of the, while this corona was happening, the more troubled cities, and what we found is the transition of materials is happening to something which is very fast going heat intensive structures. So cement, which is heavy on extraction, requires a huge amount of water, as well as later on force you to bring in more energy into your house. Maybe your more AC load usage and requirements start coming up. So we've done a little report card of some of the projects which were coming in Telangana, and almost every of that failed with the new guidelines, which we're expecting that we need to control this more rising temperature issues and concern with us. So not only that, even your daylighting to great extent and ventilations, all these are making a situation very difficult. Effectively, what will happen is your load onto the environment in terms of invisible water will start increasing. So what we have done is there are certain kind of technology which are indigenous technology which exist in our country. So we started documenting those, trying to see, because they makes these technologies are making a very good combination around you. Like, for example, they're coming from the natural resources, they are very local, they requires very less amount of water as well as the kind of technologies which may be, or maybe they are the one which is available to you at very doorstep of it, doesn't require much of embodied energy coming to it. So we started doing this project in Orissa, as well as there's another one which is in West Bengal. So team are working and looking at what are these technologies and how cool and better they will be, and how in harmony are there with regard to rest of the water as a visible water which is around it. So how these combinations are going to make an effective, you can say, the nature, or what we call it, a symbiotic relationship is also developing from this side of the world, where we look at the material interface and together. So we're just doing a lot of work with regard to it, where these compositions will be having a kind of dashboard available where people can make good selections, and so that at least this invisible water as well as the visible water both can work in harmony and tandem with each other. Some of the next steps has been mentioned. Whenever you get a time, we'll be providing, I think, the presentations to the audience, and they can have a look at what are the way forwards as well as the issues and concerns, which I have briefly mentioned in these 3 slides to you. And hand it over back to Dr. Kulwant. So in case there is any questions, I will be happy to address those. So.
Thank you so much. You have summed up 52 slides in exactly the time provided to you. That was really, really wonderful. I think the very important thing that you have highlighted is the waste to energy nexus. You need water for producing energy, and you need energy for pumping up water many times. I think in the city of Indore, which brings water all the way from Narmada, it pumps up water, to almost like half a kilometer, above, because the city of Indore is located at a much higher level. And therefore, as a matter of fact, a lot of energy is really required for that purpose. And therefore, actually, there is a kind of real good nexus between the two, and we have to have a kind of proper symbiosis relationship between the two. Very nicely, highlighted. I think some of the takeaways which you have already summed up very nicely are very, very helpful. I am moving toward the last speaker. Is Anupama Madhok Sood, Director and Editor, Water Digest. Anupama joins in place of Mr. Ashwin Pandya, who had to attend an important meeting convened by the Honorable Minister of Water Resources today itself at the same time, and he could not join. And on our very special request, he has deputed Anupama to, I think, speak on. Anupama actually has been working in the environment sector for the last 16 years, especially in the area of information, education, and communication and outreach. She is heading the Water Digest magazine and is involved in the dissemination of information and updates to the water industry. Very specially, I think she is going to speak on upscaling the role of 3R towards water security through advocacy and stakeholder engagement, which is so very critical and so very important. The floor is yours, Anupama.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kulwinder Singh ji, and thank you for having me here on this very special forum. And I'm happy and glad that I got this opportunity to kind of share my views today. Allow me to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay. So to be honest, past few years, recycle, reuse has garnered a lot of attention in policy interventions and in a lot of programs. However, due to various bottlenecks like technological inadequacies and limitations in scaling up and upscaling these technologies, policy and law convergence, lack of available financial support and incentives, and lack of awareness among the stakeholders, these particular interventions could not bring the desired results at the same level as they were expected to, as far as India as a country is concerned. As I head Water Digest and we advocate for water, so we've been doing it from past 16 years, and I would like to say that being part of this advocacy, we got an opportunity to interact with a lot of policymakers, a lot of players who are into the domain of water sector. We've been trying to put water on the forefront of the agenda as far as various policies are concerned. We also got an opportunity to interact with various concerned people who are working in this domain. And past 2-3 years, we have organized a lot of programs on wastewater management, wastewater, the untapped resource, restoring water, restoring nature. So through this platform, I would like to share those recommendations which came up during those programs. Also, we got an opportunity to facilitate various policy dialogues. In fact, one such program was the formation of policy at center, the treated wastewater management policy by National Mission of Clean Ganga. And as part of our role, we could facilitate the stakeholder consultation with various important stakeholders from various states. And I would like to share certain recommendations which came as part of those consultation meetings. But before I do that, I would like to highlight certain key challenges which as a water sector we are facing. However, a lot has already been said and discussed by our fellow panelists and all our previous speakers, and that's maybe the disadvantage of being the last speaker, but kindly allow me to share a few highlights because that will only help me in setting the tone for sharing the key message which I would like to convey at the end of my program, my dialogue. So few of the key highlights, the key challenges, of course, urbanization is the main factor which is posing a lot of impact on various resources, and water is no exception. The declining water per capita water availability is one thing which is very much visible, as also been shared by Mr. Mohanty, that water availability, we have seen the declining water availability. We had been somewhere around 5,177 meter cube in 1915, and which has come down to 1545 meter cube in 2011 and much lower today. So that means, yes, we are moving towards somewhere in the anything below 1,000 meter cube is a region, a situation of water, water crisis, and we are already in a situation of water stress. Coming to the various sector, of course, there is an increasing demand all across the sector. The demand for water has periodically increased in all across the sectors, whether it is domestic, agriculture, or industrial. And while the demand has increased, the overall availability of water resources remains the same or rather decreased. And this is a time when we need to judiciously utilize the available water resources. However, the situation is entirely different. The available water resources like the groundwater available to us, we are already in a state of overexploiting our groundwater resources. The studies say, the recent report by groundwater, Central Groundwater Board, which says of 2017, wherein almost 6,881 blocks were assessed, showed that almost 17.2% of the total blocks were overexploited. Compounding to this is the inefficient use of water in all the sectors, as also been shown by Shri Avinash Mishra ji, that in the agriculture specifically, the water use efficiency is somewhere around 38%. And that too, let me tell you, in the best of the best projects which are being run in the the command area development project in the agriculture sector, they give us the efficiency of say around 38 to 40%, 38% maximum side. However, if we talk about the domestic sector, there is a lot of leakages in the conveyance system. And if we talk about the leakages, there are almost 30 to 40%, rather 30 to 50% of leakages, that to reduce the overall water use efficiency. As far as the industrial sector is concerned, there also the consumption is much larger as compared to other countries. So all in all, it is posing a lot of stress, lot of pressure, and in fact, these are all points which are moving us towards water insecurity. So and apart from that, of course, changing climatic conditions are adding further. So while I talk about all these points, which are giving the perspective of water availability, there is another perspective of water security, which is through the quality of water. And when we talk about quality, we talk about pollution load. That has also been discussed by all our previous speakers, the kind of availability of treated treatment plant, the treatment systems which exist in India. Just to give a number. So very recent report of Central Pollution Control Board has given us these numbers, and they are well versed and well known by all of us who are in the sector since long. So when we know that there are existing challenges, which are all of these, like the improper functioning of the infrastructure because of various reasons, the reuse of, also there are lesser opportunities for reuse of treated wastewater, slush management is also a concern, due to lack of available infrastructure, policy interventions and convergence, like I mentioned earlier, lack of awareness among stakeholders. So what is the key to move forward? So I would like to say that the key to move forward is the integrated approach for wastewater management. And when I say integrated approach, that has to be an approach where we have infrastructure, that is the adequate infrastructure need to be there. Whatever is available, that needs to be upgraded. We need to have sustainable financing system. We need to have conducive policy approach, also available and affordable technologies, and very important, institutional framework and awareness building. When I say institutional framework, awareness building, I would like to say that at the heart of this entire framework, there is the water governance. The water governance, which needs to be inclusive, an inclusive water governance approach with a clear identification of the roles and responsibilities by each and every actor. So now I would like to share a couple of recommendations which have come up during our programs, which we have done with various stakeholders. So one such recommendation which came was promoting use of treated wastewater as an alternate source of water will reduce the dependency on freshwater resources. It shall also reduce high losses due to interbasin transfer of water. So this recommendation specifically came from one of the representatives from Gujarat. And let me tell you, in Gujarat, as Mr. Mishra has also mentioned, that Gujarat and J&K, they are a couple of, these are a few states which are pioneer when it comes to implementing wastewater reuse policy. And Gujarat, they released their policy of reuse of treated wastewater in May 2018. And they, when they made this recommendation, they actually kind of implemented this project in Gujarat. WRD Gujarat, Government of Gujarat, they initiated utilizing treated water of STP of Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation for irrigation purpose in command area of Fatehwadi irrigation project. And through this project, they are actually irrigating almost 12,000 hectare area in Kharif season as well as Rabi season. So all in all, they are basically utilizing this treated wastewater, and they're utilizing it and transferring it and in the nearby area. Apart from that, there was another recommendation which was shared by one of the representative of Gurgaon. So they, the representative specifically highlighted and mentioned the need of decentralized treatment of wastewater. Now, why did she say so? She mentioned and shared the excerpt of one of the status report published by NGT. So she mentioned about the district of Gurugram, and she mentioned that there was a treatment gap of almost 32 MLD in 2012. However, this treatment gap does not include the overall treatment of the nearby areas, which has the rural segment, which is almost 65% of the population, which is staying in the rural segment. So that means the centralized system does not include the wastewater which is getting generated from the rural settings. So this was suggested that the decentralized treatment system for these rural segments can cater to the disconnected dots and for the water network system. Coming to another recommendations which came from one of the representative of Maharashtra state. Maharashtra, another very active state, in fact, one of the states which has regulatory authority. And it was said that though there are, ULBs are still struggling, they are making a lot of efforts as far as wastewater treatment is concerned, as far as utilizing that wastewater is concerned. However, still ULBs are struggling. Their capacity in terms of, their trainings, their skill development, that needs to be further enhanced. They need capacity building program. There needs to be more of outreach for the staff of ULBs. And there needs to be a regular fast tracking process for them so that they can also get involved and can participate more in any of these programs once there is a launch of any treated wastewater reuse program. Also, when it comes to implementing wastewater reuse, at this stage, of course, we are not looking at potable use of wastewater. So the very first beneficiary when we talk about reuse will be the industrial segment or the farmer community. As far as industrial segment is concerned, I feel by and large, more or less, industrial segment does have acceptability. They are already aware that such kind of wastewater reuse policies are in place, and the industrial sector is already at a good level of awareness, and many industries have achieved the zero liquid discharge and have minimal dependence on fresh water. And there are many examples of industries which are actually reusing their own treated wastewater, and the awareness is only increasing with time. As far as farmer community is concerned, again, I am just talking about, I'm just sharing through the examples by experience through the Maharashtra segment. As far as the farmer community is concerned, there were a lot of misgivings, and they were initially not ready to accept, but gradually the acceptability of the farmers for treated wastewater is also increasing. And eventually, if you see in the long run, the adverse effects of climate change on the rainfall pattern, the inability to the large and medium water reservoirs to reach the water to the tail end users, this will only increase the pressure on the available water for farming. And ultimately, they will be dependent on treated wastewater. So it's very important that these communities should be made part of the policy dialogues. They should be involved at the very initial stage of the formation of any such policies. There should be regular stakeholder consultations with these communities, whether the local NGOs should be made part of it, whether there is any policy formulation happening, then there should be a connect which can connect the farmer community with the policy makers, and there should be regular stakeholder consultation, which will pave the way for acceptability of these policy at a later stage. As far as the general public is concerned, which is of course will be the contributor towards the success of these campaign at a later stage. So I feel they should also be involved at this point. And reason being, while we say that today we are of course not looking at potable usage of reused or treated wastewater. However, in the long run, maybe the kind of challenges we have, the situation we face, maybe we will not be left with any choice but to move towards using and reusing this reclaimed water, as is the case with Singapore. We see the concept of new water, which you also mentioned. But if you see the success of new water in Singapore also owes a lot to the outreach campaign, the campaigns which have motivated the general public to accept the reclaimed water for the potable purpose. And I feel that for the there has to be extensive publicity. The national water policy, which talks about reuse of wastewater, needs to be publicized well, which will only enhance the acceptability of treated wastewater use at all levels. And I feel there we, as the water media of the industry and many other media and other such organizations who had been acting as the catalyst and the facilitator, come in the picture. And I think we can definitely play a bigger role wherein we can reach out to the concerned stakeholders, act as a bridge, and amplify the impact of any such policies, and can also bring the stakeholders in the overall process of consultation. So that's what I have to share. Thank you. Hello.
Thank you. I think that was really, really excellent, because advocacy and stakeholders engagement is certainly very important, as you have underscored, to change the culture of treated wastewater reuse. There is no doubt about it that we have to advertise our policies. You have indicated about the water policy of 2012, that you have underscored the need for highlighting. Wonderful examples that you have given from Maharashtra and other states. And very particularly, you are very right that the industry segment has accepted it very well, and agriculture farmers are accepting it also in different states. But you do need, as a matter of fact, a kind of advocacy. They need to be really briefed about these things, so that once they are convinced, then I think we are able to go ahead with that. And some of your recommendations that you have summed up are good takeaways for this purpose, to ensure water security not only in urban areas, in industry, or water security in, I would say, various sectors across the board, because it's not just I would say that overall, but we are talking across the board, various sectors, following the principles of, I would say that water reuse very particularly. May I actually, with that, of course, the presentations are over, but there are a couple of questions that I will like to take up by the participants. There's a very interesting question by Sneha Bhattacharya, where she says that, can these traditional home building technologies be used to make housing societies, which houses thousands of families in one single plot of land? Since many Indian cities have space constraints, traditional housing technologies will require huge areas of land in the outskirts, which again will either become unaffordable or away from the occupation commercial areas of the cities. The question is basically, if I can request Mr. Sareen to take the question and respond.
Sure. Basically, 70% of the India is still self-built, like the kind of even Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana support which has gone into the affordable housing schemes. 70% of that is going into the self-build, where people are making their own choices. So now it's not about that you can bring in all the traditional technology into what we need now. Definitely, there is a lot of learning from these technology which are also missing. So the graduation, for example, in one particular graph I was showing that you are moving from red brick to straight to a concrete wall. So there are various alternates which are a close fit to the traditional knowledge and information which could be used in modern techniques. So nowhere respect to environment as well as to the subject of 3R which we are talking about is being given. So the jump or the leapfrog is happening more from an economic perspective as compared to what environment is about. So there are a lot of such possibilities, and a lot of combinations are there, because now these days the structures are mostly portal and you have very less load bearing on any of the wall. And so there are a lot of combinations which are possible, which could be incorporated in the modern technology. But also the more important for us to understand is what are these perennial or the underground things which were making people comfortable with such arrangements. So that should not get lost.
Thank you so much. I think there's another question by one of the participants saying that, if, for example, a country like Singapore can reuse the water and convert it into a potable water, can we not really use the same water for our own cities and towns? Basically that. If you would like to take it up, perhaps I think, we like to,
See, effectively, when it now comes to the new way of development in urban, for example, the zero discharge is becoming a mandatory into in the bylaws as well as in the environmental impact assessment conditions. So when you look at something called a zero discharge kind of scenario for even the small platform of the structures which are being constructed, you are effectively moving towards something which is that which is a reutilization of water within the space which is given. So effectively the country, whether it's liking or disliking or whatever way, whether you are ready or not, your nomenclature is now asking you to bend towards that direction, because that's how the process is happening. So we do not see a straight switch going on to something which is portability or things like those, but definitely we see there is a graduation of utilization. Like for example, as Harpreet ji was giving a graph that whether you really require this much of water in this category. So there is a substitution of water to a one level up or a one level down is definitely happening because of the three or the circularity which we are looking in water in the urban field.
Okay, thank you. I think more or less, I think the questions from the participants, they were mainly two questions. Any suggestion that they come, I think we will be sharing these presentations that you have, as a matter of fact, shared with us, with the participants. They will be there on the website. May I also mention to you that this program has been live on Facebook. This program has been live on other social media also. So therefore, as a matter of fact, although as a matter of fact, the physical participation by the participants on this Zoom may not be reflecting the total participation, because the registration was fairly large and this program has been run live on various social media. This will also be, also be actually shown. Again, the recorded version of this entire program will also be available on the website of All India Institute and also on our website. No doubt that, summing up, if I may say so, there is a dwindling water availability, growing environmental concerns, complex health issues, and rethinking on current economic growth models. They are all intrinsic to developing and implementing the circular economy. Central to the circular economy approach is the principle that resources are used for as long as possible, recovering and regenerating products and materials at the end of each service life, therefore closing cycles. The circular economy derives value, for example, water, energy, nutrients, organic matter, beautifully presented by several speakers on the subject, from waste streams, by applying a business perspective and shifting the focus away from simple coverage. I would like to say that, this is a very important area. I would first like to thank Mr. Mohanty. It was his thought that we should focus mainly in the seminar, in this webinar, on the theme of water security, and also like to thank him for actually delivering the keynote address, detailing out this whole philosophy of the principles of circular economy, and as applicable not only in the water sector per se, but also, I would say that several other sectors. And the whole approach that actually has been presented also by Mr. Mishra from the Niti Aayog. He has tried to indicate that there are 11 areas which actually have been selected by the Government of India, where they are focusing on the circular economy at a broader level. But at the same time, at micro level, lot is happening so far as India is concerned for adoption of circular economy principles. I particularly will like to mention that while, for example, Anupama tried to indicate that segments like industry, or they have adopted the principles of water reuse, substantially, which indicates actually that we are moving towards the circular economy. It's also that agriculture sector itself, is adopting that. And what perhaps I think Rajneesh actually tried to underscore, that in the urban sector, in the built environment, things are changing very, very fast, as a matter of fact, and we certainly will be moving towards the direction of circular economy in the built environment also. Dr. Khurana, Indra Khurana, actually tried to, in a way, highlight the need for community approaches to be adopted, particularly for the rural areas. I mean, of course, she started with the pandemic and how, as a matter of fact, pandemic has taught us so many lessons. But very shortly, as a matter of fact, we have in India a lot of experiences in terms of using the, I would say, community approaches for this purpose. And I think that will really go a long way. There are a lot of takeaways from the, from this webinar as such. And we do hope that it will be of great benefit. And we will be in touch with all the, not only with the resource persons, but also all the participants who, as a matter of fact, have joined us on the Zoom meeting, and also those who actually have participated through the social media, through our Facebook and through our other social media channels in that. With these words, I would like to thank each one of you individually, having agreed, spending time, making wonderful presentations, and making this a great success. Thank you so much. With these words, I'd like to, close the session. Thanking you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gurban Singh. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.